Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Sunday morning and the Old Cookbook Show. Today we're going to do a recipe out of the Dominion Cookbook. This was published here in Canada in 1899, compiled by someone named Anne Clark. So in my collection, I collect mostly cookbooks in the English language published in, England, Scotland, Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. Pretty much the English-speaking Commonwealth nations, part of the empire. Books that came from the empire. All of these books are pre-1950. Really pre-1940, but 1950 is kind of my cutoff. A lot of the books are like this one. They have a name of the person who compiled the book. But in most cases, here's the dirty thing about cookbooks. In most cases, on a compiled cookbook, I'm going to say compiled because they didn't write it. There is no copyright on recipes, on a list of ingredients and a method. You can copyright or trademark a specific title to a recipe if you wanted, and there's several cases of that in the not so distant past, where a chef has, trademarked the name of a dish so that they can control it. But the actual list of ingredients and the method, those cannot be protected in any way. So a lot of cookbooks down through history where it's just the compiler has found recipes from different places, they've put them in a book. But a lot of my cookbooks, I'm going somewhere with this. I am going somewhere with this. Let me turn off the heater. It's still February while I'm shooting this. But a lot of the cookbooks that I have are community cookbooks, church cookbooks, where individual recipes are submitted by someone who cooks them. It's their favorite recipe, or it's their signature dish, or it's something that they're very proud of, a dish that they really enjoy making. They put their name to it. It goes into the book. Their name is underneath it. And those books, I think, really reflect what people were actually eating. In a lot of these books, they're aspirational. They may not actually reflect what people in the neighborhoods were eating, but when you get into a community cookbook, that's what people were actually eating. So, we're going to come down to chemical leaveners, and here's the thing about chemical leaveners, and I've spoken about this an awful lot in the past. This is buttermilk. I've cut this recipe in half because we only need about half. Baking soda and baking powder commercially don't become available until the 1850s. Prior to the 1850s, in all of these English language cookbooks, both compiled cookbooks and community cookbooks, prior to 1850, leavening is done by whipping eggs for cakes, whipping eggs, or using yeast. And so cakes and bread both used yeast for leavening. And there was kind of this, is it a bread? Is it a cake? Who knows? Because they're both leavened with yeast. And post 1850, you start to get things like quick breads and cookies and all of those sorts of things that use baking soda or baking powder. And so baking soda is soda. It needs an acid, often buttermilk or vinegar, to activate it. And the acid and the base that is the soda react, you get carbon dioxide, and that gives you leavening. Baking powder is an acid and a base in powder form. They coexist in a container, and when you add a liquid, any liquid, they become dissolved, and then they react, give off carbon dioxide. There is another chemical leavener that you don't see very often in English language cookbooks. It's an outlier, complete outlier. In my, thousands of cookbooks in the English language, I can count on my hand that I have seen, that I have personally seen as I flip through them, about 5 to 10 recipes that use ammonium carbonate or ammonium bicarbonate, which was much more popular in other areas. In Scandinavian cooking, in continental European cooking, it was used much more. But in English cookery, it just was not used. And so it's often called hartshorn because of how it was produced. It was produced from antlers. Chemically, I'm not completely positive I know exactly how that process worked. So we're going to do a recipe today. I know it took so long to get here. I'm sorry. For everybody out there who's saying, I don't care, I just want the recipe. This is called the Old Cookbook Show. We talk about old cookbooks. So today's recipe is buttermilk cakes. And so take 1 pint of buttermilk. I took half a pint because I don't need that many. Stir into it as much flour as will form a dough with 1 tablespoonful of dissolved carbonate of ammonia. You roll the dough into sheets, blah, blah, blah. Half of this recipe is about this stuff. The carbonate of ammonia may be obtained at any of the druggists. It is the common smelling salts without any of the aromatic drugs. It never imparts any taste to the food as the heat disengages the carbonic acid and the ammonia. Pretty much true. This does not need an acid to activate. It does not need a liquid to activate. It needs heat. Heat breaks down the weak bonds, giving you carbon dioxide and ammonia. You can't use this in a cake or a quick bread, like a banana bread or anything like that, because the moisture in those types of preparations traps the ammonia, and what you get is a quick bread or a cake that tastes like ammonia. And you don't want that because it would taste horrible. If you've ever eaten anything with ammonia, I've eaten hakarl in Iceland, which is a fermented shark. And it is just heavy, heavy, heavy ammonia. But in a biscuit, cracker, or, a cookie where the ammonia can dissipate during baking, this works apparently quite well. So we'll mix as much flour in here as it needs so that we can roll it out on the counter. And I know this is kind of the part where people start typing down below that they went to, some pioneer village and the historical reenactors told them about people pulling ash out of the fireplace, just, pearl ash, blah, blah, blah. Again, not reflected in the actual written record. That is historical fiction. It's overstated. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it didn't happen to any extent that was used heavily in sort of North American cooking or English cooking. Not to put too fine a point on it, but historical fiction has the word fiction in it kind of for a reason. Okay, so out on the bench, we've got a really it's just coming together. Doesn't really say how to handle it. I'm supposed to roll it into sheets. I imagine they want this quite thin so that the ammonia can dissipate, be driven off. Another thing about ammonia carbonate is that it is relatively unstable. And what I mean by that is that just over time, sitting in your counter, on your shelf, it breaks down on its own. It just breaks down on its own and making it totally ineffective. Okay, so I've cut a few of them now. And so these are relatively thin. We'll put them on the baking tray, get them ready for the oven. There's no salt in them or any kind of flavoring other than what you get from the buttermilk. Okay, last one and off to the oven. No time or temperature at all for this one. Moderate oven until baked.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends. Oh my goodness, is this the recipe that's using this?
I gotta tell you, the studio smelled horrendous.
Well, yeah, this
while
stuff
was
is really,
cooking.
like, I can see why people would sniff it to get themselves all awake again. It's like, bleh.
The smell of ammonia in here was just absolutely horrible. Doesn't smell, the actual end thing, the buttermilk cake doesn't smell like that.
I don't know that it's much of a cake, though. It's kind of flat.
Well, so it's in breads and cakes. Mm-hmm. The word cake in this time period was used often for what we would today call a cookie. Mm-hmm. Or a cracker was often called a cake.
I think if you made them thinner, they might be a cracker.
Huh.
I mean, they're just little breads. Little flatbreads.
They're little flatbreads.
I guess salt would be good on them.
Hummus.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, just put a little salt on them.
Yeah.
If you bake them again, salt them, bake them. Uh-huh.
Some kind of a dip would be great. This,
Yep. But they are pretty
they're
plain.
plain. On their own, they're pretty plain, right? There is no salt in the recipe, so a little bit of salt would go a long way to kind of bringing it into 2026.
Well, they're soft. They're doughy.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say 100%. Don't
waste your time.
Don't waste your time trying to find the ammonia carbonate. I know that it's hard for me to actually work this through because it doesn't show up. Like I said, it doesn't show up in the English language cookbooks. It's not something that was ever used in English cooking. But it shows up a lot in Scandinavian cooking and Eastern European cooking for thin cracker-like cookies, like certain types of gingerbread, like crispy gingerbread.
Maybe it has impact if you'd made them thinner.
Maybe.
Like crackers.
But we did get a good rise. Mm-hmm. The instructions are, as always, ridiculously vague. But what I was going to say is you could make this with baking soda. Totally get away with baking soda. Because the buttermilk would bring the acid to activate the baking soda. Mm-hmm. You could make them with baking powder because you don't need any acid for baking powder. But definitely something in a dip would be great.
There you go.
Tell us.
Have you cooked with it? Mm-hmm. What do you know? Because clearly, we don't.
Because I know that we have a lot of viewers from the Scandinavian countries and a lot of viewers from Eastern Europe who mention this every once in a while.
And you clearly must know more than we do.
You know more than we do. Definitely use, because this is not part of our cooking history. Let us know what you use it for and recipes that you use it for, and then maybe I'll try and find some of those and haul this out again. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon. Thank you, everyone, for making it to the end of the video and for hanging on to watch this next bit. As in past years, in 2026, I will again be raising money for Hope Air. Hope Air is a charity here in Canada that connects people in need of medical care or medical treatments with transportation to get from where they live to where the treatment is available. In Canada, healthcare is universal. Healthcare is freely given to anyone who steps up and says, I need treatment or I need care. The problem exists in the way, the sheer size of Canada's geography and the way our population is distributed. There are some people who live in areas that are underserved by healthcare. And they need to travel to the larger centers, be it Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, Winnipeg, Montreal, Halifax, or St. John's. There are people who live in Canada's north or in more remote areas where getting to one of those centers to get treatment, be it cancer treatment or ongoing operations for some other health concern, getting to those centers is incredibly difficult, incredibly stressful, especially if it's a child that needs this health care. There are places in Canada where you could be driving 10 or 12 hours to access the treatments that you need. There are places in Canada where there is no road access. You may live in a town that is fly-in only. So what Hope Air does is utilize private pilots like myself who volunteer their time to fly to some of these locations, pick up people, and bring them to the treatment that they need. Or at least bring them to a larger center where they can get on a commercial flight, again, provided by Hope Air, to the city where the treatment is available. And for parents who are bringing their children for this type of healthcare, Hope Air also has partnerships with hotels where they can provide hotel stays for the parents during this, stressful time. For those of us that live in the big cities in Canada, this is something that we don't really think about. But there was a time where Julie and I lived in Northern Ontario, and we lived in towns and villages where, it was 3 hours just to drive to get to a grocery store, let alone drive somewhere where complex medical care could be given. And we were very cognizant of that when we lived there. I'm in the incredibly fortunate position that I can make a change, that you can help make a change. Last year, my viewers, you, donated $40,000 to Hope Air. That's an incredible amount of money. That really changed lives. That helped a lot of people. And I'm so thankful to you that you would open up and do that. It's absolutely incredible. And so for 2026, I'm hoping that we can do that again. In August of 2026, I will again be participating in Give Hope Wings, which is where a bunch of pilots like myself, we go out and we fly around and we raise awareness and we raise money and we sort of put a spotlight on the fact that this charity exists and this need exists and this gap needs to be filled. And so this summer we're going to the East Coast. Some of the highlights are Halifax, St. John's, Newfoundland, Goose Bay, Labrador. Then we're on to Rimouski and Trois-Rivières and ending up again in Sudbury. So I hope you'll come along with me over on the Flying Channel on that trip. Julie and I will be making it this year, and hopefully you will enjoy coming along with us. And if you can donate money to Hope Air, I thank you very much. I also understand that if you don't live in Canada, you may not feel a connection to this. I would hope that you you could find something in your community that you could help out with. I think that we really need to be a community of people that help each other. That's the only way through this, is to help each other and to give of our time to those that need it. So I thank you very much. So I will put all the links for Hope Air and everything they do in the description box below. Please check them out. And I thank you in advance for however you can help.